The tempo of Russian offensive operations in northern Kharkiv Oblast continues to decrease after Russian forces initially seized areas that Ukrainian officials have now confirmed were less defended. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and military officials stated that Ukrainian forces have partially stabilized the situation in northern Kharkiv Oblast bordering Russia. Ukrainian Kortysya Group of Forces spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Nazar Voloshin stated that Russian forces are attempting to make tactical gains near Lukyansk and Vovchansk to create footholds for future advances. However, Ukrainian counterattacks, artillery and drone strikes are preventing Russian forces from gaining a foothold in these areas. Kharkiv Oblast administration officials stated on May 15th that constant Russian shelling makes it impossible for Ukrainian forces to establish fortifications within 3 to 5 kilometers of the international border in Kharkiv Oblast. Ukrainian forces constructed the first and second lines of defense about 12 to 13 kilometers and 20 kilometers from the international border, respectively. ISW assesses that Russian forces have advanced no more than 8 kilometers from the international border in northern Kharkiv Oblast. Russian forces operating in Russia could easily conduct artillery strikes against Ukrainian defensive positions close to the border, making fixed defensive positions potentially vulnerable and possibly indefensible. Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to publicly prioritize the further mobilization of the Russian Defense Industrial Base, DIB, while also attempting to assuage possible domestic fears about the negative effects of increased Russian defense spending. Putin met with the commanders of the Russian military districts and with officials involved in the Russian DIB on May 15th, focusing on the need to develop the Russian DIB and economy. Putin appointed Russian presidential aide Alexei Dyumin and Minister of Industry and Trade Anton Alikhanov to the supervisory board of state-owned defense conglomerate Rostec, tasking Dyumin with assisting Russian efforts to provide the military with necessary weapons and equipment. Putin specifically noted that the Russian defense industrial base must increase the quality of Russian weapons. He stated that whoever masters the latest means of armed struggle faster wins, and called for the defense industry to double, triple production to create more effective, accurate, and powerful weapons to decrease Russian losses. Putin's focus on technology is likely a response to Ukrainian officials' discussions about Ukraine needing to innovate technologically to beat a numerically superior Russian force. Despite Russia's large artillery supplies, Ukrainian artillery is more effective. Putin indicated he is unwilling to fully mobilize the economy, impacting production capabilities. The U.S. Helsinki Commission stated that the U.S. should allow Ukraine to conduct strikes against military targets in Russia's border areas amid ongoing Russian offensive operations into Kharkiv Oblast. The Commission stated on May 15th that the U.S. should not only allow but encourage Ukrainian forces to strike Russian forces firing and staging in Russia's border areas as part of Russia's offensive operations. However, U.S. officials continue to express unwillingness to support such strikes. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated that the U.S. has not encouraged or enabled Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory, and Ukraine must decide how to conduct this war. The Kremlin confirmed the appointments of the newly formed Moscow and Leningrad military districts and other military district commanders on May 15th. Putin met with Russian military district commanders and senior defense officials, confirming former Russian Ground Forces Commander General Alexander Lapin became Leningrad military district commander. Several other commanders were reassigned, including Colonel General Sergei Kuzovlev to the Moscow military district. These leadership changes are likely in preparation for Russia's expected summer offensive. ISW assesses that the Kremlin rotates officials to incentivize different factions to achieve objectives, preparing for significant military efforts expected to begin in late May or June. Ukraine's main military intelligence directorate, GUR, reportedly struck a Russian fuel depot in Rostov Oblast on the night of May 14 to 15. Ukrainian outlet Suspilm reported that GUR attacked a fuel depot in Proletarsky Rayon, Rostov Oblast, with drones causing explosions and a fire at the facility. Rostov Oblast Governor Vasyl Golubev stated that 2 Ukrainian drones caused explosions at the depot but denied that a fire occurred. This strike highlights Ukraine's ongoing efforts to disrupt Russian supply lines and logistics, impacting Russia's military operations. Such actions aim to weaken Russian military capabilities and hamper their operational effectiveness.